All right, everybody properly caffeinated, at least for the time being? Okay. Glad that everyone's talking amongst themselves, but it's time to focus up here now. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Let's get this guy. Thank you. There you go. Next up, I'm delighted to introduce Jay Oberai. He's, let me give his official title, he's CEO and founder of Synergy Quantum, and he's going to share with us a perspective called Quantum Securing the Maritime Economy. And just to qualify further, exploring how financial systems and maritime economies can be safeguarded through quantum security frameworks, right? Please join me in welcoming Jay.
Good morning. I come before you not only as a technologist, but as someone who profoundly believes in privacy, the privacy of the individual. I grew up in Switzerland, as you can see, pure Swiss, where every day I was fed with a meal of cheese and privacy as a fundamental right. It is not about the power over others, but about the protection of one's own space. It's about the preservation of your sanctuary, which I often say to my clients. In the quantum era, however, that sanctuary is under threat. Distinguished guests, 8 years ago, I set out to solve a simple but profound problem. Quantum computers threatening to expose every secret, breach every vault, and decode every encrypted message ever sent. For maritime nations, this is not an abstract. It is about protecting the cargo that feeds nations, the oil and gas that fuels economies, and the digital systems that connect every point on every ship. Looking around this remarkable venue, the Abu Dhabi Maritime Academy's state-of-the-art campus, I see bridge simulators, AI training labs, and emerging quantum testing beds. This is where tradition meets transformation, where ancient maritime wisdom embraces quantum revolution. The maritime industry, as you all know, is valued at roughly $137 billion today, but projected to be $243 billion by 2032. So it's not just quantum that's growing. Our markets are growing. Our relationships, the people that we are going to secure are growing massively. So the opportunity is absolutely massive. Now let me paint you a picture. Oh, sorry, that was that. Let me paint you this picture. Right now, as we speak, there is a silent war being waged in the quantum domain, what we call harvest now and decrypt later. So you've heard about this over the last 2 days, so I'm not going to get into this. But every encrypted communication between our vessels and our ports, every financial transaction, every confidential cargo manifest is being collected and stored by adversaries who are betting on one simple thing, that within 5 to 15 years, you fight whichever number you want. But within the next 5 to 15 years, quantum computers will crack today's encryption like a child opening a chocolate wrapper. It's going to be that easy, actually, and that tasteful too. Consider the Suez Canal blockage of 2021. 6 days, $400 million per hour in delayed goods. Now imagine a quantum cyber attack that doesn't just block one canal, but infiltrates entire global shipping networks, port management compromised, navigation systems spoofed, container tracking manipulated. The economic damage is not measured in millions, it's measured in billions. Founded in EPFL in Switzerland in 2018, Synergy Quantum, I spent the last 6 years on working on these exact problems and finding solutions. We're now based out of Switzerland, but have our H&D in India, in IIT Delhi and IIT Madras. Our mission is very simple yet profound. To ensure that the maritime nations maintain the digital sovereignty in the quantum age. For maritime nations like the UAE, which has positioned itself as a global logistics hub, quantum security is not optional. It's an imperative. Maritime sovereignty in the quantum era rests on three simple pillars. Informational sovereignty, right? The power to keep state and commercial secrets secure. Operational sovereignty, which is the ability to run ports and vessels free from quantum interference. And third is economic sovereignty, which is the assurance that trade is protected from quantum-enabled espionage. It sounds very simple, but just remember one thing. Without quantum security, all three pillars will crumble. And these are the three fundamental that we start operating from. Now let's talk about the architecture of quantum maritime security. How do we build a quantum resilient maritime infrastructure? First is, of course, PQC, which is our first line of defense. Our PQC solutions implement NIST approved algorithms. We've successfully, however, integrated these into the existing maritime systems with zero disruption to operations, processing over 10,000 operations per second with our FPGA accelerated implementations. From the moment a ship requests berth allocation to the final customs clearance, every bit of data is protected by algorithms that even a million qubit quantum computer will not be able to break. The second is QKD, which you well know, and I'm not going to go into the science of QKD. But what we're working on is a hybrid of PQC and QKD combinations. So we feel that that's the most efficient way to do it. And the third is the QRNG again. There are a lot of random number operators, and there I think there's more sellers of random number operators than there are actually random number operators out there. And finding the real entropy and which ones are more suitable for certain technologies is what we focus on, is the integration of these three components to make a full-fledged solution that's a full stack. Now let's talk, sorry, I should be pressing this a bit more. Get carried away with my... So the fourth is the quantum infrastructure stack. Let's spend a little bit more time on this. Since this is the more critical one, is the implementation of the entire thing. So let's talk about the communication layer, which we've installed quantum VPNs for vessel to onshore links, the identity layer with quantum resistance certificates for crew and cargo. Then we've got to focus on the data layer. This is with quantum safe databases for manifests and operations. Then there's the quantum compute layer, which is protecting OT and control systems. Let's make absolutely sure we understand this. Very few quantum companies are working on OT. We've had the benediction or the luck or the quantum entanglement to work with a company like Bosch, so we're working with them on actual factories of the future, where OT security is very, very critical. So that could be transported then from industrial to come to ports and shipping too, which adds a lot of IP. Then there's the governance layer, which ensures that secure compliance and reporting. And then there's the application layer, where quantum hardened port management software is secured using PQC. So all of this will help to create what I call defense in quantum depth. However, I know you will all agree with me, technology without proof is only a promise. To safeguard maritime sovereignty, we must move from words to action. These 5 pilots, securing terminals, protecting vessel communications, locking supply chains, stress testing with digital twins, which people have spoken about yesterday, and empowering ports with quantum intelligence, form that urgent roadmap. Together, they ensure that our seas, our ports, and our trade routes remain unbreakable in the quantum era. So I urge all of us to work together to create these test beds and these proof of concepts. And this can only be done if we do it as a team. And I'll come to the conclusion of how I think we could potentially work all of us together to do so. But certainly these test beds represent the bridge from concept to deployment. It is critical. We must move towards that. This industry is ready for this, ensuring that maritime quantum security is not just a vision, but a reality. Now let's talk about something more fun. Our court goes right down to the Swiss thing, which is money. Right? So technology without economics is, again, just an expensive research project. And that's maybe why I live in Switzerland. The global capital markets are waking up, however, to the quantum risk. They're not stupid. The insurance industry has already sounded the alarm. Quantum threats are now going to be part of the maritime risk calculations. When insurers begin to insure quantum vulnerability, it is no longer a future concern. It is a present danger and an expensive one. Lloyd's of London has begun evaluating quantum preparedness in their underwriting criteria. I can give you live examples. We're talking to banks in India, and we're asking the CISOs, excuse me, do you have a cybersecurity insurance? And they're like, yes. I'm like, is quantum attack in that insurance? And they say, we don't know, but everything is. And so we went to the insurance brokers, because the point is that if there is a quantum attack, these insurers are dead. And so we went and spoke to the insurance industry and the ministry, and we asked them, have you priced in quantum? They said no. Now, I know after that meeting, the first thing they'll do is write a letter to the bank saying, excuse me, but just to let you know, a quantum attack is not in your insurance policy. We don't secure that. What do you think the CISO is going to do when he gets that letter? The first thing he's going to do is say, oh, okay. He actually has two choices, right? The first reaction of his will be, send the letter back to the insurance company and say, okay, can you price me quantum insurance? How do you price quantum insurance? If there's an attack, it's an attack. It's on the whole thing. So it's going to be very difficult to price. The second option he has is to actually start working on PQC migration and securing themselves against a quantum attack. And I think insurers will push companies to do this. They'll say, either we'll insure you if you are secure, otherwise we're not going to insure you. So it's going to become a major, major issue. And I just put this in real bold because I think it's important. So in the future, quantum vulnerable infrastructure will become uninsurable, unfundable, and ultimately unusable. Let me just repeat this. Uninsurable, unfundable, and ultimately unusable. Let me share some numbers with you now. The average cost of a cyber attack is $3.86 million. It's peanuts today. When there's a quantum attack, we're talking about $50 to $100 million per incident. So the cost could be up substantially. Cybersecurity as a spend today is at $1.76 billion. To secure ourselves completely in the maritime industry, it's $8 to $12 billion. This means there's a gap of roughly $10 billion that needs to be covered. Who covers this? Here is where it's going to get really interesting. Capital markets aren't just pricing risk. They're funding the solution. We're seeing the emergence of what I call quantum security bonds, where financial instruments specifically designed to fund quantum migration projects. These bonds offer relatively attractive yields, where financing the quantum hardening for critical maritime infrastructure is going to depend on. At Synergy Quantum, we're collaborating with sovereign wealth funds, infrastructure investors, and development banks to design innovative financial mechanisms to make the quantum transition more affordable and scalable. How do you do that? Well, one approach that we're working on quite strongly is called quantum maritime as a service. Which is basically shifting the burden of heavy capital expenditure to manageable operational budgets. So you do it over a period of time. The second in parallel is maybe risk-sharing models, where insurers, operators, and technology providers together ensure that both the costs and benefits are distributed fairly between themselves. So people are also pioneering I mean, I don't really believe in it, but they're pioneering green quantum bonds, trying to link quantum security to EFG goals by showing that if you secure supply chains, you cut inefficiencies and emissions. It's a long stretch, but there's a lot of money in ESG, so why not try that one too? Finally, though, public-private quantum partnerships, governments can de-risk investment, private investment, with guarantees and co-investment, accelerating adoption while protecting national interests. And I think that's an important one, and we're talking to a few governments on this, is that cybersecurity, sovereignty is also critical, and it has a cost. So why don't you also help companies, not just give them a mandate to secure themselves, but fund some of that transition? So when capital markets embrace quantum security, the impact on ports is going to be transformative. Quantum secure infrastructure could drive down insurance premiums by 20 to 30%. We spoke to Zurich Re and Swiss Re, and they're talking about a cost reduction of roughly 30% if you do have some quantum security. While improved credit ratings will certainly also reward companies that do so. Banks will also lend greater support for quantum-protected supply chains, so your funding costs could go down. So there's a lot of economic benefit. So when we go out there and talk to our customers, don't talk just about your technology and whether it's better than the competitor, just talk about also what the cost-benefit analysis for them is. And there's a lot over the next 3 to 5 years that will come through. Trade finance will be much stronger if you have quantum secure infrastructure. And ports with quantum secure systems will command premium valuations in global markets. So it actually has a huge impact on the value of a port too. I don't think a port without quantum infrastructure in 5 or 10 years from now will have any value. And I think this will make them move. So what I wanted to talk to you, what I wanted to announce to you today is when I look at the summit, this is the world's first quantum maritime summit. Why don't we all get together and announce a quantum maritime, like a global quantum maritime quantum security alliance? Create an alliance where we work all together, an alliance dedicated to safeguarding maritime sovereignty in the quantum age. Where quantum security cannot be achieved in isolation. This is why the alliance brings together quantum shipping lines and port operators, naval forces and coast guards, quantum technology companies, financial institutions and insurers, as well as standard bodies and regulators. The mission of this alliance is both practical and extremely urgent. Over the next 12 months, the alliance will deliver 3 core outcomes: a quantum maritime threat matrix, which continuously assesses risks across critical infrastructure, a quantum readiness roadmap with clear milestones for ports and shipping companies. And then finally, the maritime quantum security standards, which I think is the most important and which most of us really require. When we go and see companies or customers, the first thing they ask us 2 questions, very simply, is have you got this tested? Is it certified? And is it validated? And that's where we all get stuck, right? And we've spoken about that quite a bit here. But why not create a maritime quantum security standard, the first industry-wide standard for quantum secure operations, which we will then propose to the International Maritime Organization. I invite every leader in this room to join us, not as observers, but as partners in building a quantum secure maritime future. Charter members now you want to know what your benefits are, right? So charter members will help shape global standards, okay, big deal. Access excessive threat, but here is the point, access excessive threat intelligence, participate in joint exercises, and benefit from collective purchasing power and preferential insurance terms. We can do that if we all get together and work together. So finally, distinguished friends, we stand at a high tide of human history, right? The UAE has always been at the maritime crossroads. Now we have the opportunity to become the world's first quantum secure maritime nation. And with the Global Maritime Quantum Security Alliance launching today from Abu Dhabi, we can lead not just by example, but by coalition. Together, let's ensure that the future generations look back at this moment and say, that's when Abu Dhabi became the birthplace of quantum maritime security. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. That was great. Wow, thank you.